This is Power Athlete Radio. With your hosts, Denny K, Professor Booty, and the Luke Summers. And now, toes forward, hips locked, shoulders set, and retract those scapulars. It's time for some knowledge bombs.
Power Athlete Nation, it's that time. Episode 49, one away from 50. We got a great show for you. I've been excited about this one. Luke Summers is with me.
What's going on?
Tex is with me. And we got a special guest on the line.
Howdy.
But first, before we get to him, Luke and Tex, how you guys doing?
Not too bad. It's raining in Southern California. It's one of the, this place is unbelievable. I can't stand the weather.
Better than snow, right?
Yeah, you guys got snow.
Yeah, hot and humid in Tampa.
It's hot as usual in Tampa. I kind of felt like a pussy this weekend.
That's right. And humid.
All right? I'm going to kind of put that out there.
Why? What
We're
happened?
at the Naperville CrossFit football cert, and part of the seminar is running. You're going to have to go outside. Midwest, it was like what, Luke, in the 30s?
Yeah, I
Maybe
think so.
upper 20s. Little bit of snow flurries. Luke's out there in a t-shirt. We're all wearing shorts and a t-shirt, right? There's like 25 attendees. They're all lined up. They're listening to Luke, hollering at them. Luke's in a t-shirt and shorts, as am I. But I had to go back in and get my sweatshirt, right?
Dude, yeah.
Luke's been in California for 3 years. I'm still here, and he hasn't missed a beat. He's not even shivering. My knees are knocking. My arm hairs are standing up. I had to go inside and get my sweatshirt on.
It was, it was nice to have that crisp air just rolling over my skin. It was a nice reminder of what home is like.
At least some of the other guys went in and got sweatshirts too.
Yeah,
so
dude.
It wasn't just me.
Well, I came in there and it wasn't too bad. I don't know. I mean, the cold never really bothered me. But what's funny, Tex, so we're out there doing, straight ahead speed, and I go in for a back squat deadlift lecture, and I realize that I've lost absolutely all dexterity in my hands because they're numb. I just wasn't really paying attention, so I'm trying to write on the whiteboard. I'm like, Carl, you need to stall for me, man. I need some blood flow through my hands. But so needless to say, there's very little on the whiteboard for back squat deadlift because I just couldn't write.
But at least you avoided the lecture sweat from the straight ahead speed.
Oh God, yeah, for sure. That's one of the hardships of being in a part of seminar staff where you not only demo the practical but also give the lecture is you come in just drenched in sweat, and if we wear black shirts, so if you're one of those real sweaty people who sweats a lot of salt, then you have these weird sweat lines under your boobs, which are man boobs, and it's awkward for everybody, But that's what Tex is talking about with that lecture sweat. So what else, Denny? I mean, what else do you think of that this weekend?
All right. Well, we got a special guest for you, and we got to get this guy talking like ASAP.
Was he blowing your mind before the show?
Incredible. The Physio Detective, right? Antony Lo, how you doing?
Well, thank you. It's caught up. It's 20 past 4 in the morning here. I'm a little bit tired, but I'm excited.
Well,
Ant, you're
we
the man.
appreciate you getting up early to join us on the Power Athlete broadcast.
It's an honor to be on here.
Over the weekend, Luke kind of filled me in on some of your background, told me a few stories. Would you mind just kind of introducing yourself and maybe talk a little bit about how you hooked up with the Power Athlete coaches?
Sure. So I've been a physio for a while now. I guess I started studying 21 years ago, and everything that I do in physio I try to apply it to everything. I try to capture everybody. And so I ended up in CrossFit because I was a fat slob. I'm still too fat, but I am stronger. Um, and how I hooked up with the para athlete coaches was via a CrossFit football seminar held at my gym, and just helping out Ben and Luke with a few things just quietly, and the conversation started from there. And I was very generously hosted by them for last year's CrossFit Games at their stall, and just caught up with them down at CrossFit Balboa, which was great to spend a week down there watching them work, and how they work, and having good discussions. And that week actually helped me solve a few problems. It gave me the space to think about some more things, and I was able to pick their brains, and hopefully I contributed in some way to them as well.
Yeah, it was great to have Ant out, and Ant's being pretty modest. He's a super sharp dude, and one thing that's shown through when we had a chance to pick Ant's brain, both down under and when he was stateside, is I think you you described it, Ant, as looking at an issue as like a complete system and understanding that there's multiple components going on, both up and downstream, and taking that approach to anecdotally, Murray Daniel talked on comments on Calais' blog about like his knee was bothering him, and you were able to kind of just visualize and find out that, hey, it could be a rib issue or something up in the thorax. So talk a little bit about how you that whole holistic view that you take versus some other disciplines or some other physios within that discipline.
Sure. So, for example, one of the ways that well, the only way that I can help figure out what's going on with somebody is actually to watch them move. So, video of them playing, or actually get anyone who visits me as a patient, I get them to squat, I get them to do their problem movements. And then what I'm looking for is what you guys would call force bleed. I call it torque bleed. It doesn't matter what it's called, but I'm looking for the very first thing that is doing something not quite right. And that could actually be the very start, just the very way that you stand before you start moving. So I'm really interested in your starting position, and then I'm really interested in how you get from A to B, everything in between. And for example, if I was looking at somebody's knee that was sore, like you mentioned, Murray, I want to see him move. And he mentioned the ribs. So the way that I did that was I can see the body move. I can see the body shift. So you see a subtle slight shift, and the earlier that you see it, the more significant it is to me. And then I correct that, and then I see if anything else goes on. And the thing that you try to help the most, that fixes the most, is the most important thing. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, would you say that almost the majority of local issues, like, hey, my knee, my ankle, my hip, my shoulder, is caused by something upstream or downstream?
Yeah, it's difficult to say because there are local things that go on. I think a lot of the time, though, the limbs themselves tend to bear the brunt of a poorly controlled trunk. I think that's a generalization that I'm happy to stand behind, but I
Sure.
always check the local issues as well.
Hmm. And then do you find, but in the majority of the cases, it's not necessary, let's say for a CrossFitter,
Yep.
it's not necessary, or somebody who's training, either like I mean, how would you describe someone who's training just kind of to train versus someone who had, like an athlete? How can we generalize
Uh,
that?
Exercise.
Exerciser, okay. For an exerciser, whether it be competitive or an enthusiast,
Hmm.
do you think, have you, in your experience, noticed a higher rate of it being local or something upstream or downstream?
Yeah. So the difficulty in answering that question for me is that often you present to me with a local symptom. You sprained your ankle, your knee is sore, your shoulder sore, you've got tennis elbow that you can't shake. Um, and so I have to still deal with whatever injury, like you've got a torn ligament,
Oh,
I
I see
still
what
have
you're
to
saying.
help that
Yeah,
ligament
yeah.
heal. But at the same time, I'm always looking, well, why did that ankle go and not the other one? Why did you
Hmm.
put so much more force on this side than the other side? Um,
I,
and so that's what I'm looking at all the time is why?
yeah.
Yeah, that big picture approach, I think what separates you from, I guess, a lot of the athletic trainers and physical therapists that I've had in my athletic career, they're just looking to just put some ice on it or only looking at the ankle and not what other problems it could cause.
That's definitely a common thing that we see around here. And to be fair to those who work with teams, quite often they're not paid very well and they don't have much time with the athletes. And so a lot of the focus is just getting them back on the field as opposed to, look, let's take the time, let's solve this in the preseason, um, and make them strong for it. Um, what they're doing is they're just patching people up to send them back out again.
Yeah, it's
Um,
kind of that triage approach, right?
Absolutely, and to be honest, I try not to work with too many sports teams for that reason because the pressure, like when I work with somebody at the CrossFit Games, my focus is not to solve their problem, their long-term problem, because I can't do that in the 15, 20 minutes that we have before they go on. Um, my whole focus is to get them through that workout. I know what the movements are and I know what their body can do. And then I have to patch them in such a way that is going to maximize their output with whatever injury or system problem they've got going on.
Reminds me of like just watching a war movie, like rub some dirt in it and get them back out there, you
It
know?
feels like that. It feels dirty, I tell you.
But that's I guess the trade-off, and we talk about it's typically pops up in our nutrition lecture, but the idea that performance and longevity are juxtaposed oftentimes because I mean you work, or inverse relationship because you work with a guy who has to get out there who's his livelihood relies on his performance and he doesn't have the resources, whether it's time, energy, whatever, to fully heal, then you got to work with what you got, right? And that's it's kind of a hard give and take, because most people, when they look at exercise and nutrition and weight training and things like that, they confuse the objective, or oftentimes as an attempt to live longer and a healthier life, but that's not always the case. So what do you think of the Open this year, Ant?
Um, I think it's been great, to be honest. The deadlift workout was the scariest one for me from a health professional point of view, but having the jumps as 20 kilo increments really let people hit a wall. And once you hit that wall, it was really hard to do too many reps. Unless you're
Yeah,
really stupid, it was hard to do too many reps once you
yeah,
hit that
yeah,
wall. So I think that was okay. I think that was good. But the last one, 14.4, I think was just almost genius in terms of it really was able to separate people out. I think it achieved the objectives that Dave Castro wanted. And
yeah,
to watch to watch good athletes do it, it was fun to watch, and also to even see people like, I beat some people who are stronger than me, faster than me, and have more cardio than me. So I think from a mental point of view, it really hit people too.
yeah.
It was good. I liked it.
Hey, Tex, did you ever did you do that workout?
No, real life got in the way. So my birthday's this week, and my dad surprised me and came down to Tampa. I had a nice schedule going with Paula, where Friday nights I just go down, hang out at CrossFit Jaguar, knock out the workout. But then my dad kind of screwed that up. So then come Monday, so my plan was just do it Monday before our 5 p.m. deadline.
Hmm.
Again, real life got in the way. So I think I've won two, you've won two. I think we're even, and it comes down to the fifth one.
What do you mean? No, no, no. Listen, this was the all or nothing one. Don't you
No,
remember?
no, no, no. So we're not going by who finishes what. It's just winner take all for these workouts, and it just came down. You got two, I got two, and now we got one more.
All right, let's do it. What do you want to bet on it?
Well, muscle up's already out of the equation, so I'm feeling pretty good.
Well, Scott,
Uh,
what did this weekend, Denny? What did we had a guy, Tommy Moon, I used to train with, and he pays attention to every little detail, but like out of all he's cataloged like all the movements out of all the previous Open, and there's only two movements left that we haven't seen. What was it?
Thrusters and burpees.
Yeah, that's it, right? Thrusters and burpees.
That was it. Yep.
So what do you got, Tex? Are you thruster and burpee guy? Can you even go fast on your burpees?
oh yeah, as long as yeah, I'm freaking 5'7". If they don't give me like a set target, if it's only 6 inches above me, I'm a monster.
6 inches? That's your max vertical.
Exactly. But I can replicate my max vertical over and over. That's what makes me such a good athlete, is my replication of speed, not necessarily my work capacity or lack thereof.
Hmm. Yeah, you've been hanging with Ruiz, haven't you?
A little too much.
All right, let's get back on track. What else? What else do we want to talk about with Ant?
What about did we start the conversation with force bleed yet? Have we
Not
discussed that?
Yeah,
no,
we
not
can. Just talking about kind of positions. So I know you're working with a lot of CrossFitters now, and efficiency of movement and decreasing force bleed is almost everything in that sport. So even taking that deadlift box jump workout, for example, I'm sure if we watch the videos of all the top 10 guys, Playtech included, that their posture was perfect and they did not round their backs at one. So how important is that kind of loss of torque and force bleed for power, strength, speed, and efficiency of movement?
Okay. So because you said power, strength, speed, and efficiency of movement, force bleed is important for that. I think it's important that to maximize your performance and to minimize your fatigue, um, I you've got to maximize your efficiency. Um, so from the health professional point of view, though, which has to take into account the other half and also the negative consequences, I'm always asking the question, how much can you push your tissues until they go to failure? So I I always have that side of the coin to deal with as well. Does that
And
sort of answer your question?
yep. So how about with your field sport or kind of sport athletes? Do you see a lot of guys that they walk duck-footed, pigeon-toed, knock-kneed, bow-legged? Do you feel that that has any impact on their performance or lack of performance, limiting factors with the force bleed?
Yeah, look, I think it does to some degree. I've seen some guys though, they have the flattest of the flat feet. It's like they're walking on Malibu surfboards, and but they are the fastest. This guy that I'm thinking of is a fullback for one of the teams down here a decade or so ago, and he was able to turn on a dime. He was able to cut, but he had the worst feet. Just really flat. I remember talking to his podiatrist about how we just couldn't believe how under load, under speed, he was able to control all of his joints. But then you put him on a treadmill to watch him walk, and it just looked terrible, terrible. So it really highlighted to me how you are outside of your sport is gives you an idea of where to look for some of the potential problems that might crop up, but also how you are during your sport. He just lined everything up and controlled everything that he needed to output a fantastic performance. But certainly, for him, he's going to illustrate for me what I call the dog and poodle argument, and that is poodles are always dogs, but dogs are not always poodles. So just because if you've got, say, externally rotated feet when you walk around, if you can get into a squat or you can get into a position where your feet are straight ahead, um, that's good. It's going to let you do externally rotated relatively well as well. But not everybody who's externally rotated can get into that straight position. So it's all about the assessment. That's really important to me. So just because you can do, sorry, so if you can do the ideal, then you can do the suboptimal and come back into the ideal. But just because you do the suboptimal doesn't mean you can do the ideal. And that's what I'm always looking for in dynamic movement, as closely related to their sport as possible.
So, and do you think if you were to correct some of the, if you could correct some of the issues out of that, let's say that fullback you were talking about, that he would yield or reap a performance benefit
Um,
on top of what he could already accomplish on the field?
Quite possibly, quite
Mm-hmm.
possibly, he was able to control his foot to such a degree that it didn't provide a problem. It allowed him to move better. I'd have to examine him. He wasn't my
Sure.
patient. I'd have to examine him to see if I could improve his performance. But yeah, I saw a current first grader. So that's like our top flight in the NRL, in the rugby league professional game. And this guy was super strong. Um, and I'm just thinking back. He had a lot of good things. His problem was a cardio type problem. So I screened his body for all sorts of force bleeds and looking to maximize his efficiency. He was pretty efficient. The only thing that I couldn't do was I couldn't exhaust him to see how he performed under fatigue. So this guy's a front row forward. That means that he's in there tackling a lot, and he's
Yeah.
running the ball into a wall of guys my size, 110, 115 kilos, and just getting knocked to the ground a lot. So just how he performs under fatigue was the only thing that I couldn't assess.
And I was reading an article that's kind of circulating out there, and it was talking about how the way that at the top of the femur, that ball, the way the femur attaches into the pelvis, the ball and socket joint, like that ball on some people's femurs are like at a perfect 90 degrees from the top of the femur, and that other people it's more like 45. And
Uh-huh.
the difference in those degrees, according to this article, and I can kind of post a link to you guys, it said that that difference is going to dictate if people are able to squat below parallel or not.
Yep, totally.
And
Anatomy is big.
how, I guess my question would be, because this article really didn't answer it, but say somebody new comes in and I can see them, trying to squat and they're just tight all over. They're not able to get below parallel. Is there anything else, any other signal or marker that I can look for that's going to tell me if this individual happens to have that, that high ball and socket that's going to hinder them from getting low? Or is there really no way to determine that, and you're just going to have to keep putting them in different positions to determine that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. What you're looking for is the test that you can do on the gym floor real quick to see whether or not that's going to be a problem in the future. Um, there are screening tests that you can use for antiversion and retroversion. So it's not just the angle at which it goes into the socket, it's also the twist that your femur has and the angle at which the ball points at the pelvis. It also depends on how far forward your socket faces versus how far out. So you know how there's some guys that look good in a squat and their feet are just underneath their hips and they look fine, and as soon as you want to take them to shoulder width or wider, they look like they can't cope, their knees collapse in. That's probably almost certainly an anatomy issue. Um, you've also got people who have a tibial torsion. So for instance, I won't ever squat straight ahead efficiently with my feet because I have a twist in my tibia. So these are all things that can be taught to you. Um, the the easiest one is an anteversion retroversion test, is where they lie on their tummy with their knee bent to 90 degrees, and you have to feel for the outside bone of the hip, and then you measure the angle at which their leg is off to the side. I can't remember what the test is. It's still before 5 o'clock in the morning, but I can look it up and send you the link if you like. I've read
Yeah,
that article that you're talking about though.
yeah, and let's maybe we can connect afterwards, and I'll get it up in the show notes for everybody to check out.
Beautiful.
All right. Well, we got a submission that was sent to us. You guys want to touch base with that from
Sure.
Sean Egan?
I had one more question if we can hold off.
Sure.
Just based off one of my experiences, when I was just working with a college football team, we had the fastest guy on the team. He extremely tight calves. He walked duck-footed, and we did monster walks one day, resisted monster walks, and every time this guy was up, I just kind of walk with him, and he could not get to kind of internally rotated toes forward. So I approached the strength and conditioning coach after the session. I asked him, Coach, aren't we supposed to teach like toes forward, athletic position? And his response was, yes, but he's the fastest guy on the team. And my question was, could he be faster? And this coach's response was, he's the fastest guy on the team. So with I know Luke kind of pointed at it with the flat foot, fullback, and with this athlete, can we get them to be in a good position? So I know when they play in sport, they may control their body with this flat foot or duck-footed position, but won't their athletic career be at risk if they continue to do that, even though they have control now? You think that control is long-term or sustainable?
Sure. So when I said control, I meant that he could get his foot into a straight position and an
Oh, okay.
ideal position. So it's not just control a bad position, it's actually under load, he got into a good position.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to get at with that dog and poodle thing. He could do the ideal, it's just that he lives, because it takes less energy, he just lives in a suboptimal position. And so so for your example, can that guy get better? If he can't achieve ideal in a dynamic situation like the monster walks or even running, if you film him and he's got biomechanical issues, there's no guarantee that it will improve his performance. But I've seen a lot of people improve their performance when I fix them. So I'm still always going to have a go. I always
Okay.
test. I always assess. I always have a go.
Yeah, just in my experience, a coach looks at that best performer or the strongest, the fastest on the team, and then that becomes the norm. So they're almost encouraging you don't have to do calf mobility because player number 28 does not do calf mobility, and he's the fastest guy on the team.
Well, maybe not the
Yeah.
norm, but the standard.
Callie's here.
Hi.
Hey,
What an
Callie.
intro.
Hello.
So I just didn't want it to, I don't know, just based off my experience, coaches see one thing with one athlete, and then it becomes their experience. And then they train or coach that athlete every single way that way. So I almost want them to take your approach where you just look at every athlete individually.
Yeah, look,
Um,
for that athlete, if I truly believe that what they were doing was not ideal, what I would do was I would find a way into his system to make him better. and then break down his beliefs as quick as possible. So the way that I do that is most people want to be strong. So I take guys that are way stronger than me, and I just show them how I can push them over, how they're weak in the positions that they think they want to do. So one of the classics is in posture. You know, you're taught to put your shoulders back and down, and then people have carried this over into their lifting. And I'm pretty sure I did this with you, Luke. But
Yeah.
you know, in a shoulders back and down position, it's really weak for your shoulder. I don't know why people do it. And as soon as I start doing that, it starts messing with their minds, and then they want to know my way. And I just have to prove every single time, and I always ask my patients to do it, is to test me. Whatever I give you to do has to make you better. It has to improve your performance. Otherwise, it's not going to work. I think I wrote a blog post on Brandon Roy. He's a shooting guard. He was a shooting guard for the Portland Trail. Was it Portland?
Yes.
Yeah. If you wanna cry and pull your eyes out of frustration, you should watch. You should go to my blog and type in Brandon Roy and see some of the rehab exercises his trainer was putting him through, and then ask yourself the question: would he still have knee cartilage in if he just had somebody different rehabbing him? Yeah, there's an example of a genius on the court who was doing things suboptimally and should have been pulled up. Somebody should have had that under control. It's very disappointing.
Yeah, and when that discussion that I had with Ant when we were talking about just retracted depressed shoulder girdle, it triggered a post we put up on the site a while ago about overcooking cues, and really how when we go into these seminars and we're working with athletes in such a short period of time, and it changed our context as well. But I mean, we give cues to overcompensate for athletes to tap into some tension as a kind of physiological cue to get into good position. So this retraction depression, like there's a way you could overcook it, and that was Ant's term. Where people they rely on tension either through the shoulder girdle or through the retraction of the subscapular system.
As like a proprioceptive.
Yeah, as a cue. And then all of a sudden, and like you said, he's like, yeah, you probably relied on that a long time ago, but you don't need to rely on it
now
anymore.
You're just walking around with your chest stuck out like an asshole.
No, like a totally legit dude. The American pro. So, no, it was super enlightening, where it's just like, oh yeah, over time, you don't really need to rely on that tension. So I got someone popped in a question here on our Q&A deal for Ant, and we'll jump on that real quick before we go any further. All right, Danny? Playtech's here. Playtech, what's up?
What's up, y'all? Sorry I'm tagging in late here. Had some meetings I had to take care of at work.
Some PR.
You ain't got the hate.
Just the LA Times called and wanted to know about my faux hawk.
Envy and hate are.
Oh my God, the faux hawk is straight infamous now.
They're actually kissing cousins.
All right, so here's a question: Does Ant have any tools for self-diagnosis, finding out if pain is coming from another part of the body? That's a pretty loaded question, but or is traveling across the world the best solution? So, Ant, why do you think that?
Look, I think if it's in a distal area, if it's in a anything from your hips down, or if it's from your shoulder out through your elbow and your wrist and your hand, I think you have to play with different things. Always start with a joint above and a joint below. And this is for somebody to self-diagnose themselves, which of course we don't support. You should go see somebody who's licensed and registered to help you. But if you're going to have a look yourself, always start with the joint above and below, and just push on something and see if that makes it better. You really are the best person to tell if you're in pain or not. The difference between me and you is simply that I've I'm a lot older and got a bit more experience and a bit more knowledge under my belt. But basically, that's what we do. Traveling across the world, look, Australia is a beautiful place, and I won't stop you traveling here, but there is always Skype as well.
We have, and you got a tennis court in your backyard and stuff too. We could all just plop down and stay at your spot, right?
You can. I've got a rig in the backyard. I've got 4 bars here. I've got some
And
weight.
I think I'm coming to the Australia cert, the one that's just outside of Perth. So I've used that as an ultimatum.
That's a long ways away from Ant, though.
Is it?
Yeah,
Oh.
that's like
That's kind of like I live in New York,
York
and you're going to Los Angeles, but it's
Oh,
close.
Perfect.
You'll have to fly past.
I don't get it. Those seem so close.
Stupid Americans.
Not at all. You just haven't consulted the map yet. That's all.
All right, so we knocked that one out. All right, Danny, what was the other question that we had submitted?
Well, Sean, he emailed in. He says, "Hey, Luke, I wanted to get this question during the live show today, but we got socked with this blizzard here in Buffalo. I was wondering if 9 and 7 are too young to be following the CrossFit football or power athlete programming. My little ones have been doing CrossFit Kids for 2 years and are so focused. We have equipment in the garage for me to run them through the program. Do you think it's too early? They have learned the Oli lifts and squats and deads at CrossFit Kids. Thanks. Love the new site. Keep up the good work." We've had similar questions about youth. We've talked about it on previous podcasts, but we got Ant on the line. I mean, maybe he could kind of give his opinion on that as well. I'm going to assume that the kid obviously would start on like amateur or something like that if his dad was smart.
Well, Denny, just remember we had a guy, AJ, at the seminar who had his kid lifting weights since 9 years old. He was 11. And, he
First
basically...
time he power cleaned, right?
Yeah. Well, no, that was Gabe. So Gabe was 12. That was the first time he deadlifted and power cleaned this weekend. But John's popping on right now. He's like taking off his gloves and turning the hat around.
Ready.
He's getting fucking ready to go into this one. So John, he jumped on a little late. So 9 and 7-year-old boys, right, Denny?
Yep. Is it too early to start, the barbell training? Obviously saying they have some squat and deadlift experience.
I would not add barbell training in. I mean, not to say I wouldn't teach them the moves. I mean, you might do some PVC stuff, especially, or maybe even some light stuff or some of the Oli stuff. I would definitely want to teach them like the power clean, power snatch, full clean, full snatch, and I'd start working on some stuff. But in terms of actual barbell lifting, I wouldn't really recommend it until 13 or 14. Those kids are a little young, but that doesn't mean they can't train. A lot of our field work and a lot of our kind of what you see with our metabolic conditioning, a lot of the pushing the sleds, the sandbags, a lot of the hard and awkward implements,
isometrics,
are perfect for the kids. If you go back and you look at any of the strongman training, and I don't know if anybody's a geek like me and has gone back and read all the history on like Louis Sewer and just a lot of the old time strongmen from around the turn of the century. Every one of those guys developed their strength as a child, either doing some form of manual labor. Louis Sewer worked in a bakery, and from the time he was a young kid, carried these 300-pound sacks of flour up and down a ladder. And there was a story about him watching his mom throw two 300-pound sacks on each shoulder and go up and down these ladders. They found Alexiev in a coal mine at age 12 years old, working with the men in Siberia. So I think realizing that, and we get into this a lot. I'm actually working on an article for Mark Ripto on this, the difference between weight room strong and field strong, that kind of cock strong that, and anybody that's played any sports, anybody that's ever played football or wrestled knows exactly what I'm talking about, you watch a guy go in the weight room and bench 500 pounds, but he can't go out and, can't play dead on the field, or that guy that's not super weight room strong, but the guy puts his hands on you and you feel like you're wrestling with your dad. So,
and doesn't a lot of that come from body awareness too? So some of the stuff that we try to promote within younger athletes is like that body awareness and that myelination and that central nervous system awareness.
Well, and for me especially, I mean, I developed a certain skill set as a younger kid that paid dividends for the rest of my life. I mean, I boxed and did martial arts as a kid, and really, when I got into boxing, a lot of the handwork, a lot of the speed bag, a lot of the jumping rope, and a lot of the hand-eye coordination that I did as a younger kid ended up developing a certain skill set that allowed me to be successful for many years in my previous life as an NFL player. So I think there is a very real training program that I would do for younger kids, and I would I'll tell you a little history on what I'm doing with my girls. They already, we take them down. They go to gymnastics 2 days a week. They swim and try to get them out and do as many things as they can. So I think offering variety in the sport, just having a kid basically go into the weight room and do some basic barbell training, is not nearly as beneficial. But there's an interesting article. It was a research study that did that. I can't remember, and I'd have to go search for it. It was in one of the training manuals from the Russians, where they did a huge test where they exposed certain kids before puberty to physical activity, physical training, and then they had another group that they didn't, and then after puberty they put them all into the same program, and the kids that had been exposed to some form of weight training, some form of strength conditioning, developed strength and musculature or muscle at a greater rate than the kids that didn't. So there's a whole theory they talked about called priming the pump. And for me, especially when I look at like how I would train a 7 and a 9-year-old, it would just be hard physical manual labor. I'd make them, sandbags, kettlebells, body weight gymnastics, things like you would see in a basic CrossFit routine. But the thing I wouldn't do is I wouldn't put a clock on them, and I would force them to develop a skill pattern of perfect movement. So a lot of the skill patterns and a lot of the movements that we learn, we develop early in life, or a lot, I would take more time to develop those and not really worry about that so much. So I think that there's a definite real training program, and maybe at some point we could put out some stuff, but I think the barbell aspect of CrossFit football might be a little too early for those kids, but in terms of the conditioning and a lot of we do with our, CrossFit football metcons and a lot of the those type of movements, I would have those kids deep in that stuff 4 days a week.
Well, and it is when you look at the purpose of the barbell lifts in the program, it's to drive strength adaptation.
Well, to challenge posture and position.
And you could still utilize that and not linear progress it with other implements, I guess is what you're saying. Like, still get your primal movements in your squats, your lunges, your pushes and pulls, but
we've been going down 2 days a week to this gymnastics place and sitting in there watching these kids train, even what they're doing with our little girls who are 2. I'm actually kind of jealous that I didn't get to do gymnastics as a kid. I mean, they have a lot of 10, 11-year-old boys in there that are doing a lot of different movements. A lot of it's built on isometric holds, creating stability, and just a lot of
power.
Yeah, and you know what? And just that kind of body awareness, a lot of the tumbling, a lot of the movements. I mean, I look at that and I'm sad that I didn't go in and do that stuff, because if I could have developed a little bit more of that, I might have been more successful.
But why specifically not the barbell movements? Just for my own curiosity.
I think mainly, not that I think it would harm them in any way, but I think it mainly comes down to they have the rest of their life to
train, train. So, as opposed to play.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So making it fun. Another example, when I was I didn't play football until I was 14 years old. In 6th and 7th and 8th grade, every one of my buddies was on a Pop Warner football team that won like the national championship for Pop Warner. They were they went to Florida and played against some team, and I think they lost. But they every year they were the best Pop Warner team. By the time those kids got to high school, you know how many of them played in college?
Like
0.
A handful.
You know how many quit after their sophomore year of football?
They're just
almost
over it.
Yeah, they were over it, and it's like, it'd been such a competitive deal that all of a sudden they got to a point where they're like, I just don't want to do it anymore. Whereas a lot of these kids have been training when younger, and they've been doing this stuff, and all of a sudden I came in, it was fresh to me, and I still got to go do it. So Not to say that it would harm them and there'd be any detriment. I'm not a huge believer in that. Oh, you'll stunt their growth and you'll overload their growth plates. But I think that there's a better training system for kids
And a diverse training system too.
Well, yeah, you got to remember the biggest plus that we're going to see in this training is constantly varied, changing the implements, making things hard and awkward. Lifting weights, while not easy, is very convenient in a lot of ways. You have this uber skinny bar, these circular balance plates that fit on the end and that you can kind of manipulate it and you put it on and it's, tracks within your certain body. All of a sudden you do those same movements and you start developing these same movement patterns with hard and awkward implements. And that's where you develop a lot of this physical strength. So I would put them in sports, and if they wanted to do some form of training, I would make them do just a lot of the things that we do at our gym every day.
It reminds me of that girl that you said you dated whose father was a sprinter or a hurdler, and then she became a hurdler or a collegiate hurdler.
Yeah, no, her dad held the world record in the 800 meter, and her mom was NCAA champ at 800 meter runner.
And he had her doing just like...
Yeah, from the time she was little. So she was an All-American 800 meter runner. And so when I talked to her and she talked about, to leave the house in the morning when they got up. So when they got up, they knew they had to do 10 pull-ups. They had to jump over the couch like 10 times. And they had like this whole plyometric and workout that they had to do before breakfast, before they could leave the house. And if they didn't do it, they couldn't leave the house. They couldn't eat breakfast. And then on Saturdays, they spent all day Saturday at the gym or at the track. And they would like run and jump and they would just play all day. And then all of a sudden she never really trains. And then she was like an All-American and her sister was an All-American runner. And they just had never really ever put in many hours. But so many of the movement patterns that they had learned were just well developed.
Jumping over furniture.
Yeah, people will put a lot of value in training in this. But at the end of the day, I mean, this is kind of an interesting realization. My dog, Rocky, he had a kind of a growth on his paw, so they removed it. And the vet was talking to us yesterday about Rocky. Man, Rocky is a really nice breed of pit bull. I mean, we spent a lot of money and went out and really found a really solid breed that had great lineage. Whereas Bear, my other dog, did not have as good a lineage, and he had a lot more problems, and he passed away before. I mean, Rocky's actually older than him, and he looks great. So, I mean, the doctor was like, oh, really good bloodlines. It's really goes to show he's aged a lot better than your other dog did. And Rocky's still strong, still pretty agile. And so I kind of got to thinking about it a little bit more. And it's like the same's true for people as well as, for dogs and horses and every other mammal or animal on this planet that, you start with a certain genetic adaptation and then what you do to express that becomes kind of key factors. So I think if, especially with Erin was a good example where, she obviously came from, pretty good lineage and that both her mom and dad were pretty good at it, and then just add a little bit of training and a little bit of opportunity, and she does really, really well. Whereas you run into other kids who I had a guy one time come to us and asked me if I would train his 10-year-old because he wanted to guarantee that he went to the NFL. And I remember talking with the guy, and the guy was like, well, what can I do to guarantee my son goes to the NFL? I'm like, well, how tall is your wife? He's like, oh, she's 5'4". I'm like, well, you're 5'7". So unless you have somebody hiding in your lineage that's like 6'5" or a sub.
The milkman was like 7 feet.
Unless the milkman was like 6'5" and like or the other milkman had like a 10 flat 100 meters, I'm pretty sure it's going to be. I'm not saying it's going to be impossible. It's just going to be a little more difficult. So you're going to need a certain genetic adaptation for it. But in terms of training those kids, I think that they have their whole life to lift weights. Not to say it would not. I don't think it would adversely affect them, but I think there's a better training system to make it more fun for a lot of these kids. And it's just hard work.
So, Ant, from your angle on the physio side of things, how do you feel about youth athletes getting involved in this type of stuff?
From a purely technical point of view, there's nothing wrong with lifting weights with a barbell, like John was saying, but there's better opportunities to use their time. I think the key, to summarize what John was saying really is that you can do a lot more, you can more efficiently develop their system by getting them to do different things and keeping it varied. And like John was saying, you just broaden that base. But from a technical point of view, I think maturity of the child is really important. If they don't listen, if they don't have that mentality and that attitude of wanting to get that movement perfectly, then I wouldn't do it. I watch both of my sons. One of them will do what I say, and the other one will just try and get through the work. And he doesn't have a clock on him. It's just like, do 5 squats, and he'll just do 5 ugly squats. Whereas the other one will try and please me and try to do it with a straight back, and he tries to keep his knees out over his ankles, like he's paying attention. And he's the younger one.
He's
The
your
older
favorite.
ones-
He's your favorite, right?
Not at all. He does have the most genetic potential, whatever I could throw him on. He's the one that knows at the age of 4 and 5 when he was running and you know he started playing rugby league at the age of 4.
That's awesome.
And,
I would love
Oh
to
my
see videos,
God.
see him out there running around, just running into each other.
Oh, but he's got such natural ability. He knows exactly when to cut in, and he'll leave people tackling air because he just knows instinctively when to move, and he's quite natural that way. But my
He's the
son, when he
youngest?
runs with, he's the younger one. The other son, he plays a halfback. So a halfback's like the quarterback in a team. So when he runs with the ball, you can almost hear his brain thinking. He's thinking, what's he going to do next? What's he going to do next? Whereas the younger one, when he's got the ball, he's thinking, how am I going to get to that try line? How am I going to get into that end zone? So it's very different. But from a technical point of view, I don't have a problem with doing weights with kids. I will always question, unless I know them well, I'll always question whether their coach, be it their parent or whomever, is well qualified enough to pick up on the shearing. It's control of the shear, control of the rotation. That's the biggest thing, just from a damage point of view.
Sure.
So the loading the growth plates is not a problem because that's going to stimulate growth. It's whether you load the growth plates and then try and shear them off. That's the problem.
Ah.
And then also people like progressing and not realizing they have to be really, really very conscious of the progression.
Those kids are like Gumby.
You know, my wife and I had a pretty good conversation about it because my wife Kate is she's a really gifted athlete, and she played on the Olympic development team in high school and was on her way to college scholarship for soccer, and has always been a really good athlete. She competed in the games too for our team, and so we had a kind of interesting conversation in that she said that her entire life, from the time she was little, sports were always extremely easy, and she was always the best. She's like, you know, I just was always easy. I got up there and I could play soccer. I could do all these sports. Everything was always effortless. And, you know, just like, you know, like asking about our kids, and she's like, you know, I hope they have that same opportunity or
Luxury.
that same luxury. And I always tell her, I'm like, when I was younger, and you can talk to my brother Ed, he's like, you were a fucking terrible baseball player. He goes, you know, you were decent at basketball, but he's like, and the reason being is I was so tall. Like I was 6 foot by the time I was 13. So I was always so much taller than everybody. I think that it wasn't until that I got older that all of a sudden my kind of nervous system and my coordination caught up, and I was able to actually be, you know, better.
Use your body and your size.
Yeah. So, you know, like, believe me, there were sports when I was younger. I wasn't able to move. I wasn't able to do the same things other kids were. And it wasn't until like I got older that all of a sudden everything wired up. Whereas she's somebody that's always been really, really wired. And so.
But it's like, who's laughing now?
Well, yeah, that's why I told her. I was like, well, you know what? I'm like, you were great when you were 5 years old.
Yeah,
I
in
was
your
great
face.
all through my 20s and 30s. What's more beneficial?
Do you think, but so think about that too. I mean, she's shorter, right? So she didn't have a significant amount of like
she probably maxed out height when she was 1'6".
Because the longer gangly kids are the ones that
Her learning curve was like.
Well, I mean, even going out and watching my nephew. I mean, we go out and watch my nephew's playing flag football and also plays soccer. I mean, it's interesting just from a purely athletic standpoint to, you know, as like a observer watching these, you know, 7, 8, 9-year-old kids play. There are certain kids that are way better than other kids.
Yeah.
Like there's like a couple kids out there where you're like, dude, that kid's a really
Put
good
together.
athlete. Yeah, he has it all. I mean, he understands, he's aggressive, he plays the way he should, he moves and does all that. And, you know, my brother's a great example. My brother Eddie was always extremely gifted as an athlete, especially when he was younger. And all these parents are always like, and my brother coaches a bunch, so he's always like, oh, my kid's going to be a superstar. And my brother's always like, let me tell you about my brother John. he was not a good baseball player, and wasn't great when he was younger at sports. But as he got older, he matured into everything, and everything became much easier as he got older. So I think that there is an opportunity, and what I'm trying to get back to is that I think certain kids just naturally get it, and I think other kids need to learn to develop the skills. And I just wish at a younger age that somebody had taken me aside and been like, hey, we're going to work on these things, whether it's not necessarily barbells, but more athletic training, a lot of what we do, and given me those opportunities from the time I was younger.
Accelerated adaptation.
Yeah,
at a young age.
I think developing a lot of those athletic, believe me, I really wish when I was younger I had somebody who was a running coach. I wish I had a Raphael to teach me how to run.
No, you don't. Raphael would have murdered you.
No, I mean, it's true, because I remember, I didn't learn to run until I was always like decently fast, but I didn't understand the mechanics, and I was always much faster when I got to high school and got into track, and when I got to college, and then started going through speed program, and then when I got in the NFL and started working with sprint coaches. I think that there's a lot of things that are really holding kids back, or really a lot of those mechanical things that we could go out and teach and really work if we had the opportunity. So I think some kids are naturally just going to be able to pick stuff up just like anything. We're natural athletes, and then other athletes are going to have to be more developed. And I think creating an athletic style of training, doing a lot of the kind of the movement prep and a lot of the movements that we do, I think will help build that. But I think just like anything, it's a process. And then, much like, just like anything, like you're going to do your best and hope to God it turns out okay,
I think we should pick athletes and kids like they do on 300, and we just discard the ones that don't run like a decent 40. And then, then we have like
the ones that are
just give the slow ones a computer.
Yeah.
Give the slow ones a computer.
I mean, you don't have to throw them in the pit of death. Just give them a computer.
There you go. That's how
Isn't that what they do in China? Isn't that what they do in China?
I watched the new 300 movie.
Did you?
Yeah.
And
it's pretty good.
It's pretty. I mean, it's pretty good. It's not as good as the original.
Well, because it's
yeah,
seen it.
Sequel. It's a sequel.
Yeah, it's a sequel. But like I always do love.
I can't wait to watch that.
As a rhetoric major, a lot of what we did was with the classics, and I did a lot of classics reading, and remember reading about a lot of the Spartan, a lot of the Agoge, and a lot of that training, and like they basically just put these little savages into took them from their parents, threw them into a kid camp, and like basically didn't feed them and said you have to steal and fight for your food.
Sleepaway camp.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, we're basically taking you at age 7, and we're gonna take you, we're gonna throw it in, and basically these kids got put into this,
hooray!
We didn't get fed, and you got to steal.
Isn't that what they do in China?
Yeah.
I don't know what they do in China.
Does it work?
I don't know if it's working, but.
So I think we answered the question.
I think I want to add one more thing to the question, and John said it. It was sprint mechanics. So working with a couple young baseball player and volleyball player, all they know are baseball and volleyball. And because all they're doing is just playing those sports, their shoulders, their hips are so tight, and their running mechanics, their skipping is the worst you've ever seen. So maybe not a barbell.
I don't know if you can say that. Over the last 5 years, I've seen some really fucking bad skipping. Yeah.
All right, it's pretty bad. But if there's those athletes or attendees' parents, invested in their skip time like this father should, then maybe it's not as bad. So maybe sprinting mechanics instead of barbell stuff for variety for the sport.
Well, the other thing too, and this is a huge factor that I think we're forgetting, is kids learn by watching. So they learn how to walk, they learn how to talk, they learn everything by observing, and then they're like small little autistic parrots, and they just watch and then they parrot. So anybody who, Playtech's got like 27 kids by 27 different women, and he's doing a study on it right now. But if like, for example, like I say something and my daughter completely mimics what I have to say. So the same with movement. So if you're a crappy mover, there's a good chance that your kid is going to be a crappy mover. If you're a fairly good athlete, there's a reason why a lot of professional athletes have a lot of children that are professional athletes. It's because they're able to look at this movement, they're able to see it, and they're able to mimic it. So I think it's kind of twofold. Do you have a certain genetic framework that you're working within, and is there enough observation of enough good movement around you to necessarily facilitate an athletic kid. So
Yeah, in biology, that's what's called the gene by environment interaction. So if you're the offspring of a professional athlete, clearly you've got the genetics. But then if you're exposed to those proper movement patterns through social learning, it's going to come out. And I think there's some studies showing that like kids who are born to parents who have congenital limps develop a limp independent of any kind of congenital condition. So like, another way, I mean, the thing you want to do is I mean, the thing that I do with my kid is I keep my kid away from any kids that move,
that limp,
that limp, and that move in a sucky fashion.
Well, they did
if my kid plays with kids that move shitty, then he's not allowed to be friends with them anymore.
Oh my God.
Well, I completely like it. I mean, it's genius. That's why we just sit there and just I make the kids watch So You Think You Can Dance in the Olympics over and over again on repeat.
Yeah.
So they can. I mean, that's probably better. But there's also another study where they observed children that had been raised by their paternal grandparents, and they watched and they videotaped the kids' movement pattern. And I remember the one that was most shocking was there was like a little girl whose grandfather had a cane, and when they videotaped and showed her movement, it showed her shuffling her feet and walking like she had a cane. But there's also a lot of reason that you watch like younger children who like we go down to this gymnastics place and Killy and Jamie are in there, and there's one little girl who's actually a little younger than them who like does all the demos and is really good at everything and moves really well. Of course, she's like the fourth child, and her brothers and sisters have all been doing gymnastics, and she's been there since she was like 2 days old, and this is what they do and they work on all the time. So of course she's more developed than my kids who, basically try to sleep in the dog's cage all day and steal his phone out of his mouth. So yeah, we're right in the middle of potty training, so we've it's been interesting the last couple of days.
So you're crate training? Is that what you just admitted to?
No, like my little girls decided they didn't want to wear diapers anymore. So they basically were like, you know what, we're not going to wear diapers. And so they basically have revolted against the diaper. But then they don't necessarily understand that you have to go to the bathroom in the toilet. So I'm over there having like a intellectual conversation with a 2-year-old being like, okay, I understand you don't want to wear your diaper, but when you don't want to wear your diaper, you have to go to the bathroom in the toilet. And they're looking at me and they're like, no, Dad, no diaper. I'm like, I know that. We've established that you're not going to wear your diaper, but that's cool. I don't want you to wear your diaper. And then they're like, and then the other big one is they want to go to school. But I'm like, you have to wear undies. You can't wear diapers to go to school. And they're like, okay, Dad, let's go to school. I'm like, oh, God, this is like dealing with people at the CERT or Luke and Callie.
Well, I'm just trying to prepare you for parenthood.
Yeah, exactly. But I just don't get it. So 5 reps. Why 5?
Anything else?
I think we answered that one.
How long has this podcast been going? Like 2 days?
Yeah, we started at 6 a.m.
Poor Ant is like snoring in the background.
Are you still awake,
he's
Ant?
pecking. You can hear him pecking in the background. He's typing. Or is that Playtech grading papers?
I had my
I don't sign papers, John, because then I got to read shitty college student writing. I have fucking training to do.
You're like, I
Mace Windu.
I am working to be the second fittest man at deadlifts and box jumps in the world.
I mean, we have to have goals.
So, I mean, seriously, how much publicity have you pulled out of being the second fittest man in deadlifts and box jumps?
By publicity, do you mean tail?
Yeah, and by publicity, I just mean like hot chicks throwing themselves at you.
I've done okay.
Hey, I love it. He's like, like, oh my God, he's so good. Look how long his arms are. He's a natural deadlifter. And this whole time, I thought Playtech was 6'5". I just realized he had 6'5" wingspan. He's 5'10".
Yeah, 5'10". Weighs 175 pounds.
Whoa. 97 kilos. Relax. Not a girl.
That offends me as a woman. That's way too light.
Good.
Anything else? Ant, you got anything else you want to bring up?
I'm open to questions. I didn't have anything to bring up other than I really appreciated what John said, and the variability of training. My kids are 12, 11, and or nearly 12, nearly 11, and nearly 8. So it's been fun watching them grow up. Every now and then, the littlest one, the little boy that wants to do everything, it is from competing with his brother all the time. His brother's basically 3 years older than him, and so poor Jacob feels like that he's suffering all the time. But you know, he weighs 26 kilos and he wants to deadlift that 32 kettlebell all the time. So I'm watching him like a hawk when he does it, of course. But he just does mimic movement. So keep them out there, keep them in sports, and keep them doing many different things. My kids do so many different things. I wonder where we find the time and the money for it sometimes.
Well, I don't know if I'm sure you guys gave Ant a nice introduction, but I do want to thank him personally for taking the time out to both talk to us on the podcast and for answering all my questions and then questions on questions on questions. He's one of the smartest guys in terms of physiology and trying to teach people about their own bodies that I've come in contact with. So I hope that you make the trek out to Newport Beach again. If I since I'm just now realizing that I'll be in the New York of Australia.
Well, the upside down New York.
The upside down New York.
Well, what's good is when I tasked Callie with writing this article, where it came from is what we've come to realize is everybody is so, a la Kelly Starrett, become hyper fascinated with this idea of mobility and
without context.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's just trying to become more mobile, and I'm like, that's great, but what is mobility without stability? It's called injury. So we're actually launching our new site. It's called Stability WOD, and I'm going to start Stability WOD, where I'm going to teach people just to fucking stabilize.
I think we need to hire Ant, and he'll be Stability WOD.
Well, I actually have another idea for Ant. You know, he's the physio detective. I say we start like the bikini inspector, say, you know, the guy with the bikini inspector too. But no, on a separate note, I had a great conversation with Rob Wolf about this, and that you know, in sports, whether it be football or, you know, weightlifting or a lot of these different movements, we teach people to, you know, like tighten down and to almost like get very stable and like kind of like key in, and like you create this internal pressure and this stability. And what's interesting, every sport is like that except CrossFit, where you're actually asking somebody to stay relaxed under load. Because, you know, like for me, for example, the first time I came out and did a CrossFit workout, I remember just actually imploding because I was so used to trying to create so much stability and so much internal pressure. Like I take the same approach to CrossFit that I took when I was trying to, you know, bench 500 pounds or squat 700.
So to like thrust your 95 pounds, you wear yourself out.
And I fucking imploded. And watching a lot of these guys, I mean, I was watching some of the videos of the 14.4 and Rich Froning. What's amazing is that these guys are able to stay so relaxed during these movements. I mean, usually a toe to bar movement is like a hip flexor and a psoas movement in gymnastics, but I'm watching these guys and it's like they're using their lats as almost like their legs are almost like a counterbalance, and they're just using their legs to swing. And I believe that to truly be good at CrossFit, you have to really create a certain level of comfort and just stay really loose and like lax during all of these movements.
Efficient.
And I think that's what allows these guys to be able to do this much. And the problem is that it's really counterintuitive to just about everything else we teach. I mean, think about a guy, you know, in rugby running, as he goes to plant and he goes to take that hit, if he's lax, I mean, you know, it becomes more and more difficult. So it's just kind of an interesting, you know, to be able to string this many reps and be able to do this much volume and stay kind of at the pace that a lot of these guys are holding, you have to stay relaxed. So, and then how do you effectively stay stable? How do you stay strong in a relaxed state? I don't know.
That's exactly what it's about, though. It's about having, like if you read on the blog that Callie wrote, stability is meeting the demands of the task. It's not having maximal stability. It's having just enough stability to be safe and perform most efficiently. Sure. So I don't like the word lax, because lax means that you let things go, in my world anyway. I prefer to say that they're perfectly controlled most of the time. You know, fatigue plays
that sounds right.
But I mean, that's a talent, and that's a learned skill as much as it is to be able to like, you know, squeeze down and to get right, to be able to, you know, perform a full lift, perform a big squat, perform any of our big movements, or, you know, like a big thing too when I played football. As soon as the ball was snapped, you had to get into position. And there was we always talked about a lot of the movement we talk about when we teach the dead bug about drawing in and basically sucking our belly button in and stabilizing. That movement really comes from being able to control and always stay in this kind of ready, stable position and be able to kind of move and be able to move, because where I saw guys get hurt is when they were relaxed or they weren't ready for something, and then all of a sudden somebody would hit them from the side and they'd hurt their back, they'd rupture a disc, they'd do different things, and it always happened when somebody wasn't prepared.
At the end of the play.
Yeah. So we did a lot of training like we did when we did boxing, where like in boxing, like they would hit you with a slam ball, hit you with a med ball, and you always had to be able to constantly be moving, but had to be in a position to always take those blows. So there's a certain level of stability that you have to do, but you have to maintain and be relaxed to be able to do it.
That's why John makes us dodge wrenches regularly.
Well, if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
It's a good thing he throws like a girl. Girly man. So we're on just over an hour.
Should we nap and then come back, or?
Tex, did you want to talk about Wade's Army?
Yeah, we're Harry, our guy overseas in the UK. He put together an amazing video, so we're gonna get that out this week, and then really start kind of building that awareness. And I was thinking about our campaigns from the last couple of years, and our goal was awareness, get the neuroblastoma name out there. And now that the name is out there, I think we should kind of define it in the aspect of what is this disease. Everyone now is familiar with neuroblastoma, the word, but nobody knows what it really is. So I've been working closely with Heather DeBruin, Wade's mother, and Scott, her husband, his father. And so we've just been talking a lot about neuroblastoma and how we can effectively kind of share their story, their pain, their suffrage, and then the ordeal that families all across the U.S. are going through right now. So she's got a lot of contacts in the neuroblastoma world, families, people going through this. So we're going to try to do our best to really show people this disease for all that it is, and then families kind of highlight them, see what they're going through, and see if we can drum up some more support for research and helping families go through this as much as we can. So that's starting this week.
All right, so that's how people are going to be able to get involved, right? We'll have all that, probably get some more details early next week up on Power Athlete and out through the network, right?
Yeah.
Awesome, dude. What else? What other shameless plugs do we have?
New shorts.
New shorts are out. They're going to be on the site tomorrow. I'm wearing them now.
Jorts.
Everyone's wearing them. But yeah, they're legit. Those aren't they?
Yeah, they're nice.
Callie's not impressed because she thinks we look homeless in them.
They're cute, but they're just sweatpants that are cut off.
Yeah,
that's the brilliance.
That's like everyone, because I used to have to just buy sweats and cut them into shorts.
I don't have time for that anymore.
Macrame yourself a pair of sweat shorts.
I ain't got no time to jibba jabba.
I'm classy. I buy my sweat shorts pre-cut.
That's
at
fine.
Costco.
I'm certainly no fashionista, so I won't pass judgment.
I don't know.
Look at this little flannel I got on right now.
Yeah, what are you rocking?
It's pretty cute.
Would you steal that from some guy that you had to slither away from last night?
Whoa, low
She's
blow,
like, I grabbed this
John.
off of the
He
ground
gave
as
it
I
to
came
me.
running out.
He said I could have it.
It
It was a gift.
This was the spoils of battle.
It was a gift.
It was a gift, Todd.
And are you? I know we talked briefly. Ant, you're planning on trying to get out here in July, right?
That's right. Just for the CrossFit Games, I'll have.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it. Yeah, just working with some athletes and hopefully get out there. But I'd like to, maybe have some talks where people can come along to and hang out with you guys if you'll have me.
Well, what would be good is Luke actually broke his coccyx, and so he's going to need you to straighten it for him. So I know you have a technique for that.
Yeah, it's an internal manipulation, which I usually refer to other people to do.
Well, I know Luke's excited. He keeps talking about you manipulating his
coccyx.
Yeah, his coccyx.
Because he did so well on you last time.
Yeah, well, I
That's all you've been talking about.
Well, I mean, the problem was I had a slight bend in mine. I just don't know why it took took him 2 or 3 hours to fix it.
Alrighty.
Yeah, I was cool with it.
It's a
No,
wrap.
and I guess do you have any plugs? I mean, are you doing any
Got your
talks down
site?
under? Other than your
Yeah,
site?
look, I'm doing a powerlifting and weightlifting seminar in not this weekend, but next weekend, and I've got some seminars that are coming up around the country. So my PT education is where you find out all the links for my seminars, and hopefully I'll have some US variety as well. So
Yeah.
so California and hopefully New York and maybe Boston as well.
And we'll certainly have you on again. Sure.
Thank you. It's been great to be here. You guys are hilarious.
Sorry about the end bit. It got really informal there and very inappropriate.
Oh wow!
An
Now
ant.
we have the
An
inappropriate
ant,
police
yeah.
Oh
office.
wow.
I
Okay,
just
sorry.
want to say, as a representative of Power Athlete, I do not condone the behaviors or the language that has been used in the past 5 minutes.
By Callie.
I'm a lady. I'm a lady,
Yeah,
damn
by
it.
Callie.
Right.
All right, let's wrap it.
I did spend a week there, remember, so I do remember what you're like.
In one word, describe Callie.
How dare
Bitch
you?
mode.
Tall.
Oh.
Large feet.
Scary.
Uh,
A
all right,
lady.
boys, let's wrap it up. We'll get going next week and have. Do we have anything we can sneak anyone on next week?
Yeah, sure.
It's
Yeah,
the
we'll-
50th
talk after.
episode.
50th episode, the Half Century Club.
we'll behind the scenes figure out a good guest.
All right,
Yeah.
wrap it up.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Hey, thanks for joining us today, Ant. You're awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, Ant.
Thank you for having me. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to go to the blog, physiodetective.com, and you can ask me questions there, and happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right, take care, guys.
All right, guys. Talk to you next week.